For the next 1 hour, we want to have another conversation, which will be looking at job opportunities for Kenyans. You see, one of the things that the headlines in the paper today are saying that the president may have not much to say to people who are broke and jobless. This is one of the stories written by Vincent Achuka in the Standard today. Ruto has very little to offer today as he addresses broke citizens. Okay. What's being done about that? It's about job opportunities, and we've seen, even in the former administration, President Uhuru Kenyatta signed a deal with the UK government for job opportunities for Kenyan nurses in the UK, right? Mm-hmm. And also job opportunities were signed in that administration for Kenyans to work in the Middle East and in Arab countries, including Saudi Arabia. And then this administration, the president of Germany visited Kenya, and they signed an agreement again with the president of Kenya on job opportunities for Kenyans in Germany. 200,000, they said. The president followed that up with a visit to Germany. So all these job opportunities, and we're having this conversation yesterday, and the people who are saying, you know, what we see is a brain drain, possibility of brain drain. So let's have that conversation. Must it be looked at that way? Our guest is Professor Karl-Heinz Paque. He is the chairman of the Frederick Naumann Foundation and a former Minister for Finance for a state in Germany. Good morning, Prof.
Good morning, Egg.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Great.
We call that the hot seat of the Situation Room. How does it feel?
Well, I don't yet feel hot, but it's a wonderful atmosphere.
Very good. Do you know about the analogy of the frog? Frog?
In warm water.
Tell him.
Yeah.
So frog is put in a pot of water and the heat is turned up under the pot.
Yes.
And the frog is very comfortable in this environment, and the water starts to warm up slowly.
Yeah.
And as it continues to warm up, it gets to, it keeps warming up every degree. The frog is none the wiser, and it gets warmer and warmer until it basically boils the frog to death, and it doesn't realize that it's actually dying from that warming of the water.
Yeah. So you're describing my situation?
This is, you may then make conclusions.
Stop scaring our guests.
I'm talking about a frog in water.
Froggy.
Prof, to welcome you to the conversation, you'll get an African proverb from one African country. City usually brings us proverbs from one African country and gives us proverbs every day, a different proverb. This week, we are in Djibouti.
Yes.
And tell him about Djibouti.
Well, Djibouti is a very interesting country. It's at the Horn of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The capital of Djibouti is actually Djibouti. But the notable thing about Djibouti is the headquarters of IGAD. IGAD now is an extremely important body that regulates and tries to manage affairs that affect this particular continent. So it's a small country, port country. Mm-hmm. Once upon a time, it was part of a much larger empire, but now it's precisely that. Mm-hmm. Now, the proverb of the day. What an adult sees from the ground, a boy cannot see even if he climbs a silk cotton tree. I am told by those who know that a silk cotton tree is a very tall tree. Mm-hmm. I have never seen a silk cotton tree myself, so I will go by what I'm told, that it's a tall tree. So that is a proverb. What an adult sees from the ground, a boy cannot see even if he climbs a silk cotton tree.
Prof, what's your interpretation of that proverb?
Well, if I understand it correctly, it means that we're living, we human creatures are living in a situation where we cannot overlook the long-term and wide consequences of our actions. Things are complex, extremely complex, and we can only try to reach out into the future in a way of trial and error, to find new ways of doing things, to innovate, and then check whether it works or whether it doesn't work. So reality is cloudy, and science or academic exercises of thinking through the problem is simply an attempt to get a structure on things. So we try hard, but we never know the truth. But we hope to get closer to the truth.
City?
I like that explanation. It's a very nice explanation. Yes, it is. It is. That is what you call a philosophical explanation.
Yeah, I may be too philosophical at this point.
No, and
it
is wonderfully philosophical. Yes. Thank you.
Prof, first introduce us to the Friedrich Naumann Foundation. What is it?
The Friedrich Naumann Foundation is an odd creature. It is one of the political foundations in Germany. We have a couple of them who represent roughly the families of political philosophy which divide our political spectrum. You have a conservative foundation, you have a social democratic foundation, you have a green foundation, and you have a liberal foundation. And the foundations try to work on the basic philosophy of their liberal family to bring it forward, to modernize it, to think about it nationally and globally. They all do that. And I'm the president of that organization in Germany.
So it's affiliated to a liberal party.
It is linked. Well, it is formally independent, but most of those who engage in the foundation are close to or are members of the Liberal Party in Germany, which is now part of the what we call a traffic light government in Germany.
What's a traffic light government?
Well, the traffic light comes from the three colors, red, yellow, and green. We, the liberals, are the yellow ones. I can't tell you exactly why. And the reds are the Social Democrats, and the greens are the Greens. So let me say one thing about the German political foundations, these odd creatures. They were founded, most of them were founded in the 1950s, the bigger ones, the three big ones, including ours, as a reaction to National Socialism, to Hitler, if you like. Because the German politics at the time, Germany returned to democracy, and we said, never again. We do not want to see something like that in Germany happening ever again. And therefore, we have to educate people politically, to progress politically, to avoid a fallback. This is kind of unique in the world, I think. There are to my knowledge, there is no other country in the world where there are political foundations of this type.
You work within the country and outside the country?
Yes, we have offices all over Germany, in the different German states. We have a federalist country. And we are present all over the world, and actually roughly 50 offices. One of them in Nairobi, and a particularly important one in Nairobi. Because we have, within our global structure, which stretches all continents, we have so-called hubs for specific topics which are really global. And our global hub here, we have a global hub since 2022. Last year we founded it here in Nairobi. It's our global partnership hub, and it works in particular about development issues.
Okay. Let's talk about jobs and job opportunities and immigration. We've seen the issue of immigration rearing its head in European countries.
Yes.
In France, in Germany, in various other countries, leading even to Brexit in the UK.
Yeah.
In Germany, as liberals, what is your view or philosophical approach to immigration?
There has always been immigration. Immigration is, to a certain extent, absolutely normal. It is fertile, it is fruitful for society. It makes a society colorful. It is diverse. And we like diversity as liberals. We don't want to see a monolithic society. We want to see a colorful, diverse society. So it's absolutely positive. humanity is very diverse. We bring in our own traditions, our own ideas, our own visions. And the more you have of them, the better. However, of course, immigration cannot be limitless, completely limitless, because societies have to digest diversity. And people coming from other countries are not only great friends, they're also competitors in the market. And this is the reason why in the last decade, with a lot of immigration happening in Europe, and partly irregular and uncontrolled immigration, there has been a backlash of reaction in the public. And you see that backlash virtually all over Europe, and you see it even in a particularly liberal country like the Netherlands. You had elections recently. A right-wing populist has been elected, or has got the highest share of the vote, his party. So apparently we have a problem, but it's more a problem of, let's say, controlling the numbers and looking carefully, checking carefully who's coming in, and not a matter of really keeping people out, at least from the liberal perspective. We want to see a regulated migration, but the numbers can be high. So that's my fundamental view on it.
Is it a kind of like a puzzle situation? Because we had a bit of this conversation yesterday. And when we look at societies that are essentially, opening up borders and saying, come and work, is this as a result of a lack or a need that is on the side of the host country? And is it being paired intentionally with expertise that's available in another? So here we have, a declining percentage of the population of a working force that is then required on one side. And then you also have skills and expertise on another side. And is it direct planning whereby we say, let's have a puzzle policy where one fits into another?
Well, actually, we do have in Europe, all over Europe, basically, particularly strongly so in Germany, we have a demographic problem. Our population shrinks and our population gets older. And that's not very good for growth, for innovation, for diversity, for a dynamic society. And we liberals, at least, we want to see a dynamic society. So, of course, we say, if we have this trend and we get a scarcity of labor, and we do already have a dramatic scarcity of labor, then, of course, we also, among other things, we need more migration. So the general attitude vis-à-vis migration is really turning more positive in this respect. But the problem is, of course, we also know we cannot induce a huge brain drain from other countries. That the dynamic people all come to Germany or come to the UK or all come to Europe. We have to find a balance. And so immigration by itself cannot be the whole solution. We have to have new visions and new ideas.
But why must there be a balance? I mean, you need engineers.
Yes.
Let's say you need engineers, you need doctors. Why must you think, oh no, we can only take 2 engineers from Kenya so we don't drain the number of engineers that Kenya has and Kenya needs? If you're competitive as a market in this global village, just attract the engineers that you want. If they all come from all Kenyan engineers, move to Germany. Well, why should you care?
Why should we care? I think I can take an egoistic position as a nation and say, benign neglect. Let all the good people come to Germany. It's wonderful for our country, and we don't give a damn what the others do. But this is not my position, or this is not responsible position of a liberal who has a vision of common prosperity in the world. growth everywhere. We don't want to see countries drained of highly qualified people, and we pick them all like cherries. This is not a good perspective. I think we have to find a balance. A part of them are highly welcome, but we may find and we may try, and this is our these in this direction go our new ideas. That we find a division of labor and a division of brains, if you like, in the world globally, which keeps people stuck in their homeland and pay taxes in their homeland and get a good wage in their homeland and having high value added and productivity in their homeland, and nevertheless fully participating in the world economy. That's my vision.
Explain that vision.
Yeah.
So an engineer, let's say, say a software engineer, will work in their homeland, say Kenya.
Yeah.
They are living here. They are still enjoying their social. They still have their social networks within here.
Yeah.
But they are working globally.
Yeah.
From here, they are working for a company in Germany, for another company in the Netherlands, for another company in Nicaragua, in Papua New Guinea. From here. Okay. How would that work?
Well, until the beginning of that century, or the millennium, it was completely unthinkable that it works. Because there was simply no communication technology which could really link together the ideas. Well, when was the internet started? Commercially in the 1990s.
Yep.
I'm sorry, this is just one generation ago. And at the beginning, you could only send very small bits and pieces of information across the globe. What can you do today? You can send very complex information packages around the globe with a click of with a mouse click. And when you can do this, suddenly the door opens in the medium and long run for really having a remote division of brains and labor all over the globe. So, and it's not just the trivial information that you can send over, but really the highly complex information. So why can't an engineer, a well-educated, skilled, bright, talented engineer, sit in a Kenyan engineer, live in Nairobi, have his good friends at home, have his family at home in his cultural environment, which he loves, pay taxes in his country, and reach the same productivity, if you like, the same value added as if he were sitting in Germany or the United States or the UK. So this is a huge opportunity for that part of the world, let's call it the global south, who had seen the door locked vis-a-vis a fertile globalization for a long time. However, to achieve this, you have to have an infrastructure which works nicely, reliably, no stop of electricity. Everything has to work smoothly. That is a matter that the government has to provide. Good governance is an extremely important point here. And second, you need labor laws, you need regulations for this kind of work, because this is completely new stuff if it is done on a really global and massive scale. You know, so far, the experience, there have been models like this before. Now you know that in India, Bangalore, many software engineers are sitting in Bangalore and work for the Silicon Valley in California, and you have spots of that in the Philippines and in some places in the world. But this is patchwork, so far patchwork. We need it globally, and we need it in particular in areas which have a very young, talented, highly motivated population, and Kenya is a classical example for this. What's the average age in this wonderful country? It's 19 years. What's the average age in Germany? I think it's something like 44. This is a world of a difference. So why not go together I'm not talking against migration, to be sure. I'm just saying migration alone can't solve the problem. This would be an illusion.
So you're imagining to explore a situation whereby the skilled force from population, those with expertise, at an age that would be able to fill the holes that a declining workforce is creating in other parts of the world, can remain in their country.
Yes.
With the skills that they have, but work on a global scale.
Exactly.
But that what needs to happen, from what you're saying, is that there needs to be symbiosis when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to governance, that it has to be fluid. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And you won't reach this, I have no illusions. You won't reach this in a couple of years. It will take decades until really a network of this type of division of labor emerges. And please note, I'm absolutely sure that once you move in this direction, the close context and the trust between people of different nations working in this division of brains and labor will reach a level where it becomes increasingly attractive then for, let's say, a German firm to say, okay, at the moment I have my my production plant in Stuttgart or Munich or Berlin, but given the many people who are already working from Nairobi or from Mombasa in my company, I might think, and I know these guys now, we have close contacts, we have trust. So I might think, and I know these guys are good, they are well qualified, they are skilled, highly skilled. I might think about doing my next big investment, not in Germany, but in Kenya. So you have a kind of a gradual, what we call the sliding effect in German. It's like, once there is a structure, and even if it's only a digital one, it's an easy jump from the digital structure to the capital investment. So I am not saying, this is extremely important, to grasp the whole idea, that forever there will be the German company having its plant in Germany and doing nothing in Kenya whatsoever, but just picking the cherries of the brains of the Kenyan brains in its own production value added chain, but that there will be much more investment in emerging markets. So I think it's really a win-win situation.
I have paused, as you can see. My finger and my...
yeah, I see your finger.
Professor Karl-Heinz Paque is the chairman of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation and a former Minister of Finance in a state in Germany. He'll be telling us also about that. And he's here because he's advocating a new way of thinking. He's saying, you know what, with the labor shortages in the global north and the abundance of skilled labor in the global south, globalization 2.0, job opportunities in the north, a scarcity of job in the south. However, young population, skilled labor in the south, and an aging population in the north. How do you make those two work, City?
It looks like a marriage made in heaven, actually, if you ask me. Yes, perfect. But before we get to the perfection, I want to understand something. How are these foundations funded?
These foundations are funded by taxpayers' money. They are not funded by private money. So their independence is guaranteed legally, and they receive the funds from by parliamentary decision. Every year the budget is renewed, but they have to follow strict guidelines in their behavior,
in their operations.
In their operations,
yes,
very strict guidelines. So the standard guidelines that apply to public service and public employment
So the foundations are answerable to the citizens of Germany.
exactly.
Good. It's good oversight. Now, to the question that Eric raised. An aging population in the north and a very youthful population in the south. And I'm saying it's a marriage made in heaven. Well, for a simple reason. I'm going to go with the supposition that we're looking at a globe that has had ample experience, and because we're in the information age, we're better informed than we've ever been
Yes.
about ourselves and our being in the situation that we're in. So it means that the decision-making process has also been hastened. We can now arrive at decisions quickly because we have information at our fingertips. But that's the easy part. The difficult part is, how do you overcome stereotyped views and perceptions that we've had for the longest possible time with regards to A, immigration, with regards to B, racial issues, with regards to C, inequalities, because inequalities don't necessarily exist where there are racial issues. Inequalities exist even in homogeneous societies where people speak the same languages. So these are the things that rear their head. So even when you take positive steps forward, this always comes back, and it's always the thing that people are having to deal with.
Absolutely. I am not a naive believer in the shareable nature of human beings. You know, we are all creatures with our prejudices. We have better information today, but I'm terribly sorry. Look at what we do of the information and how much fake news is around. You know, with the level of information, you have a correlated rise of fake news. So things haven't become really easier. If anything, I'm a skeptic in this respect. But nevertheless, in a complex world with these problems, you have to find your way through, you know, and try to improve the world. In this respect, I'm idealistic. I think we need a vision where we want to go, and the vision is, of course, a world where racial prejudices are reduced to a minimum. They will never completely disappear. Where inequalities of opportunities, in particular in society, are reduced to a minimum, I'm sure they will never disappear. So I could go on. You know, this must be our ambition. And well, let me be a little bit pathetic at this point. It must be our common ambition as humanity, as it is our ambition to fight climate change. So there are, you know, I believe in the individual creativity of all human beings and the diversity and the complementarity of their characters and personalities. But on the other hand, you need some visions. You know, where do we want to go? And of course, the best instrument. Now let me turn to the optimistic part. The best instrument to get, for example, racial prejudices down is to have diversity, to live close to people with completely different experiences from a different cultural background. You know, if you look at a country like Germany, I think in the UK, in France, in the Netherlands, it's all the same. In big cities where you have people in all colors, the prejudices are much more muted than if you go into areas where you have a very homogeneous population.
Does it change
really
behavior?
Yeah.
Or
Is that
does
really
it?
true?
Yeah. Does it? I'm looking at that. If you were to go the science way and say that because people live in close proximity to one another and they're from different places, would you then be able to say that an attitude has shifted?
Yeah.
And if you were to take these same people and move them back or move them away from each other, would you see that those same attitudes would be maintained? Or is it by virtue of the fact that they live in a mixed community that brings about an attitude change towards racial prejudice, for example.
The daily experience of living in a multicultural environment. I live in Berlin, for instance. It's by now it's a very diverse city. It's not quite London, but it is a very diverse city. And if you look at the election results, if you look at right-wing populist parties who focus on racial
issues
or
of race.
Nationalistic
issues of race.
Yes.
Their strongholds are not Berlin, they are not Hamburg, they are not Frankfurt, but they are
in the provinces.
In the provinces where you have hardly any, for example, Karl Priepe. So I think this is good evidence.
You know, it is argued, anecdotally, of course, that the Scandinavian countries were among the most tolerant countries racially.
Yeah.
But it was also argued that because they didn't have many people from other nations in their country, they now do. So, two things happen when you integrate. What you're saying is true. You learn tolerance, but not everyone who comes in is a tolerable person.
Absolutely. I'm not saying that I'm explaining with my theory the whole world. No, there are, of course, other traditions which play in. And Scandinavia, for instance, well, we Germans who are relatively close to Scandinavia, we admire the Scandinavians for their civic culture. You know, the Scandinavians, when the Germans begin to scream and shout in political discussion, the Scandinavians are still sitting quietly and listening to each other. So this is a matter of mentality, which has grown over centuries. This is complex. So I cannot explain every oddity of the world with my idea. But I think if you look at the rough structure I'm describing, I think there is a lot to it. Of course, the problem in Scandinavia today, you also have in Scandinavia right-wing parties.
Yes, you do.
And you have a strong anti-immigrant tide in the countries. You're absolutely right. But the problem, I would say, for Scandinavia is roughly the same as in Germany, that there was too much irregular immigration. It was not an ordered immigration, let people come who stand ready with their skills to integrate, but different things have happened. And maybe a wrong type of tolerance vis-a-vis non-liberal philosophies, when people come and bring in ideas of violence against other groups. And that is a part of the problem in Scandinavia. We have no gangs in the country, which in Sweden in particular, which are dominated by immigrant groups. So this is, of course, a big problem then for a country.
If you look at globalization as a concept and when it made its debut on the world stage, late 90s, early 2000s, when the world said, okay, well, this is great. And the buzzwords like global village came in and people started talking about opening up borders and breaking down barriers, etc. It sounded nice of things to say when you went for these global conferences and everybody was just, using this new sexy talk about, let's come together as the world, while still holding on to very many prejudices whereby the global North and South could not really quite merge because of these prejudices. So 20 years down the line, has that really changed? When there are certain realizations, and we cannot run away from the reality that, there are parts of the world who look at Africa and say, well, you know what, still resource rich, let's see what we can do. And the resource maybe has not just stayed on mineral wealth, but has also gone to resource in terms of humans and that kind of wealth. So, have we dropped, and I'm saying we as the world, has it dropped those prejudices enough to be able to say, let us truly look at what globalization can do, whereby you involve everybody, and it's not patronizing, it's not one part of the world that is properly developed looking at the other side and saying, well, you can come and work for us, but really everybody on the table. Have we dropped the prejudices enough to be able to have an authentic conversation about globalization?
This is a very complex matter that you asked me to answer, but I try. The word globalization was born in the 1990s. It did not exist before. Yeah. It did not exist. And this was part of the kind of enthusiastic idea of having one world, information in terms of communication, in terms of distance, really growing together. And as always happens in human history, things are exaggerated.
Yeah.
Once you see the wonderful vision, you start to think that we are already close to there. We just have to reach out
and touch it.
And then we are all democratic. We are all part of a wonderful global community.
And we love one another.
And we all love one another and are extremely charitable people to each other. This is completely naive. And when I say that we believe that, I also had a tendency to exaggerate. Everybody of us, especially liberals, were particularly enthusiastic about the development. But so we are now in a kind of wave, history goes in waves. We are now in a kind of, it's like a hangover.
Yeah.
A hangover of too much optimism. And now we begin, the pessimists come up, the professional, notorious pessimists, and say, oh, I told you so, it won't work. That is wrong, it's also wrong. We now have to think about where have we been naive, where we made things too simple, where is a global social life, if you like, much more complex than we thought. And here come now here come the new geopolitical questions. Here come the terms global north and global south. They sound as if there are two blocks standing there with homogeneous interests, each block. Which is, I'm terribly sorry, but this is stupid. The global south is extremely heterogeneous, and the global north as well. Not quite so, but so there are very diverse interests and national interests, and the national interests have not suddenly disappeared. They are there to be dealt with in a reasonable way, which brings us closer to our long-term aim, which is part of our vision. So, I would say, my plea would be a plea for an enlightened optimism. Not a naive optimism, but an enlightened optimism, which looks at the path of globalization and industrialization in the last 150 years. There have been awful backlashes, but on the whole, humanity has progressed. Look at statistics, look at the per capita incomes even in the poorest parts of the world. Look at life expectancy even in the poorest parts of the world. It all improved. We're not where we wanted to be, you're not yet. But we should really think about how we can keep the dynamics of globalization and at the same time avoid the pitfalls of naivety.
When I hear you, Prof, I'm seeing the concept that you're advancing, that let's think globally, let's look at the opportunities and where they are, and let's also look at our realities and say, these skills don't have to physically move from where they are to come and benefit where they are needed. They can still operate in the new, taking advantage of the technology and the advancements of humanity today. They can work from where they are. It's a good voice. But like you said, for that to happen, a lot needs to happen in the area where we have an abundance of skill. There needs to be infrastructure that matches that skill so that you can then export the skill. Now, however, that creation of the infrastructure is where now your naysayers would come in and say, you know what, Prof, good idea. For now, people need to come to where they are so that they can go back and invest in their country. Or that is one angle. The other angle would be, so we who have the resources and the muscle, we need to send the infrastructure into that country.
Yeah.
And for us to do that, we have to have a say, because we are the ones who are investing. We've got to have a say on where that money is going and how that infrastructure will be and the technology that's going there, which means that they control the sovereignty of those countries in the south.
Yeah.
Economically controlling, which takes us back into that whole cycle of the north then having the entire stick and just giving the tip to the south.
Well, you're absolutely right. There is a problem, and you're really targeting at the problem. You know, the emerging market economies, a country like Kenya, has to do its infrastructure homework, and it's such a vast task that it will need foreign capital to support that. And of course, with foreign capital, I absolutely agree, comes influence and the danger of if you like, patronizing imperialism, if you put it straight.
Yep.
And
To put it bluntly.
And this danger cannot be denied. I can only say that we, the global north, in this sense, have to think very carefully how we design our support, the public support, and of course also how under what conditions the private capital flows are induced to be channeled into the promising countries with the huge human resources. I don't have an easy answer for that. And there is always the risk that you end up with what I call patronizing imperialism. And I find, for instance, when I come to Africa, I travel a lot, with my job. When I come to Africa, when I come to Latin America, I see, for example, many Chinese investments. And the Chinese, the way they have carried out these investments, this is what I hear from many voices from the respective countries, it is not the way I would imagine a common effort to build up a global infrastructure which profits everybody. I see something as another opportunity. And it's also a sad reality. The sad reality is that the conversation about then what happens next is mostly happening in the North. In terms of the North thinking, we have a problem. We have an aging population. Absolutely.
We have this, and we need to think what to do next. And not as much of a strong conversation is happening in the South, despite the fact that the South has got all the power at present. The South has leverage. The South has everything that the North needs. Well, almost everything. The South has the raw material. The South has the skilled labor.
Yeah.
And this is the point when the South should then be controlling this conversation and saying, okay, you know what? You want our cobalt, come and set up the cobalt factory here, or the processing manufacturing plants here. We'll give you the skills to process that. But it's still, instead we're still talking about taking the raw material to the North for processing by global South workers, either working by moving to the North or working by sitting in the South and working remotely. It's an opportunity that the South is missing, in my opinion.
It's an opportunity that North is missing as well, but please say what you want to say.
No, I just want to encourage the South to raise its voice. It must raise its voice. And I think to some extent it does. It begins. We have a gradual tectonic shift of power, in the world economy. Look at India. Look at a democratic country. a complex country, but it's raising its voice. Look at Brazil. Look at what is happening on the international stage. It's not anymore the world, where the OECD countries and notably the United States says this and that is the truth, and we have the power to dictate things. No, this is not the way it is, because you have so many precious resources. What is partly lacking in the South is maybe first the self-confidence, and second, the governance. The governance is the problem, not the resources. You have all the resources you need to get prosperous, but the governance must be there, and you have to do your homework in this respect, the South. And the global North has to start to realize that the days of a unilateral power asymmetry, from the North to the South are over. The days. And I say this very enthusiastically because this is a huge opportunity in the world to really get, if you like, a multipolar world. I don't like this term very much. It sounds more like geopolitical conflict. I want to see geopolitical cooperation.
When I said the opportunity is lost, this is what I mean. When people arrive at an agreement and understanding, say, for instance, the foundation that you work in, it's because they're of a similar mind. Otherwise, they'd join some other foundation and they work towards a common cause. Now, the associations that we have, even when the global North associates with the South, the opportunity is lost here. The opportunity to insist that the very governance that you're speaking of, insist, and I mean insist. There are people who call it controlling, they call it a form of imperialism, but so what? See, there are certain things when we talk about governance in the South. It's simply this. We have a leadership that runs rogue and takes advantage of its people. That is as politely as I can put it. Now, it is clear they run roughshod over their population. But this is made possible by the partners in the North who don't care about the levels of governance so long as they have an understanding with the ruling class.
Absolutely. This is why I'm a heavy critique of the way, for example, so-called development aid is paid out. It goes through the elites, the dominating elites for whatever reason. It's a matter of power. In the emerging market economies, and not it's coming top down, and a lot is lost in the top.
Yes,
and it's not going bottom up. So my model as a liberal would be go through civic society, go through the economic structures, and don't go top down through the political elite, because then you have groups running these countries who do not really have a great interest in the global, in their development and the global development. And I absolutely agree that the kind of post-imperialist attitude that we still have in the North must go.
Well said. Professor Karl-Heinz Paque is the chairman of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation and a former minister in one of the states in Germany. He's been our guest this morning talking about job opportunities, globalization 2.0, looking at a new way of thinking in terms of exportation of labor, importation of jobs, one way or the other. How do you look at it? Thank you very much for joining us.
I thank you, Eric.
Asante sana.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.